Jody finally arrived home around 8:30, but she wasn't alone. I walked into the house and settled into a soft armchair. My wife, Jody, usually came home around 6. When she wasn't home by 7, I started to worry. Jody finally got home around 8:30, and she wasn't alone. They talked on the porch for a while, and then said goodbye. Jody kissed him on the cheek, but then he turned, and she kissed him on the lips. He wrapped his arms around her waist. She seemed startled and pulled away for a second, but he returned for another kiss. After a few moments, Jody pushed him off toward the street, turned, and walked into the house. He turned and smiled, watching her walk in. Jody walked into the living room, put her things down, and headed upstairs to change for the evening. A few minutes later, she came back downstairs, turned on the TV, and settled down on the couch to see what was on. So far, she hadn't noticed me. She flipped through the channels and found a movie she liked. When the commercials came on, she headed into the kitchen to get a drink. I took that moment to visit the downstairs bathroom. When I returned, she was back in her seat, and the toilet flushed. Jody was startled by the sound and screamed, "Who's there?" I took my time washing my hands, then went back into the living room and sat down in the chair again. By this time, she was already halfway up the stairs, probably ready to lock herself in the bedroom if necessary. When she saw me, her first words were, "When did you get here?" I responded, "Oh, a little after 4:30. Don't you check your messages anymore? I wanted to take you out to dinner." Jody lowered her gaze to her feet and muttered something I couldn't make out. "Do you want to tell me about your date?" I asked. "It wasn't a date. It was just James from work. We had dinner together tonight since you weren't supposed to be home," she replied. She reached into her purse and found her phone, where there were 5 messages, all from me. Jody listened to the messages and cried. Her phone had been on silent mode because it was in the office. About that time, the doorbell rang. I answered it and paid for the pizza I had ordered, then took it to the kitchen and started dinner. While I was eating, she came into the room and sat at the table. I didn't say anything, just slid the pizza box over to her. Jody just sat there, not moving or talking. Finally, having had enough, I asked her why she had kissed him. Her eyes got as big as dinner plates, and her mouth dropped open. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. After a few moments, she said, "I was going to kiss him on the cheek to thank him for keeping me company tonight, but he turned his head and I missed his cheek." I asked her if he knew we were married. Actually married for over 6 years. She thought for a bit and said she thought he knew since he'd been there for 5 years. But no, she hadn't told him tonight. "What I saw was unacceptable," I said, and I told her so. I asked if I needed to talk to him, or if she was old enough to handle it. I then got up to head for my evening shower. Coming out of the kitchen, I turned around and asked her, "Do you love the man?" She gasped and yelled, "No." She tried to follow me into the bathroom, but I closed the door. When I came out, I found her sitting on our bed, her eyes red from crying. When she tried to apologize, I stopped her and told her that she had created this mess herself, and if she didn't fix it, I would. I handed her a change of clothes and a nightgown, gently pushed her out of the bedroom, and locked the door. The look on her face was priceless. The next morning, I was up early and out of the house before she knew I was awake. She had been trying to call me all day and left about 10 messages, but I ignored them. In the evening, I went to the mall and had dinner at a nice restaurant. As I was leaving, I went through the perfume department at JCPenney. I asked a woman to spray some perfume on her hand and wipe it on the shoulder of my jacket. She looked puzzled but complied. When I told her it was a joke, I entered the house at 8:30 and walked upstairs, ignoring Jody, who was sitting in the living room. I changed my clothes and went straight downstairs, got some newspapers out of my bag, and sat down to read them. Jody wasn't happy when I passed by and didn't speak. When I came back downstairs, her eyes were red again. Around 9, the house phone rang, and I ignored it. She picked up and said it was for me, James on the other end. He was stammering, trying to figure out what to say. I finally got fed up and told him that when he was ready to say something, he could call me back. I didn't have time for his nonsense. After I hung up, he immediately called back. I let Jody answer again, and she didn't say anything, just handed me the phone. James hesitated, then spoke. I didn't know Jody was married, or I never would have gone to dinner with her. I regret causing problems in your marriage, and I'm willing to come talk to you if it would help. I snorted and told him to stay away, as he'd already done enough damage. I told him he needed to find another way to spend his time, and if I ever saw him around Jody again, he wouldn't be happy. I threw the phone on the couch and went into the kitchen for a drink. Jod just left the phone lying there and followed me. When I turned around, she was holding my jacket. She wanted to know who this other woman was. I didn't bother to answer, instead saying, married women should never date anyone, for any reason. Jod launched into a tirade about how she didn't want to kiss James on the lips. It was all his fault. I exploded and left the room. She followed me, still insisting that she hadn't done anything wrong, hadn't been unfaithful, and how dare I come home with another woman. I went to the bedroom and locked the door. A little while later, I opened it again and put her clothes out in the hallway. I closed the door, but didn't lock it, and went to bed. The next morning, I left early again. There was a note on the kitchen table with the same list of complaints. I read the list and wrote at the bottom in very small letters, "You shouldn't have put yourself in this position. You knew it was wrong. Would you have done this if I had been home?" I left a blank space and wrote, "Visit JCPenney and ask Robin about this." I put the note on top of my jacket. I got home at the usual time that evening and was greeted at the door with hugs and kisses. Jod told me I was right. She shouldn't have done what she did without telling me, and if she had tried to call me, she would have seen the messages. I asked her how it felt to feel betrayed and to lose trust in me. She replied that it was the worst day of her life.